if you're an incel, I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you. Dr. Charlotte Proudman, a leading human rights barrister, is campaigning for all participants in incel culture to be outlined as potential terrorists.
So we've seen this bubbling up, especially in the UK, on the lines of, what was that chap in Portsmouth? The guy who went and killed his mother?
That was Plymouth. Yeah, that was Jay Davison, yes. And this is, I suppose, what she's making this argument off of the back of. The Independent reads that incel groups glorify violence against women and should be regarded as terrorists, Charlotte Proudman has warned. Dr. Proudman said incel groups are a growing problem, yet the authorities wrongly see incidents as being isolated one-offs rather than joining up the dots. So she's trying to present this as a predominantly societal problem, of course.
But also, hang on, joining up the dots to what? Because, I mean, that's what terrorism is. It's violence, political violence, and political violence for a political goal.
I imagine joining up the dots that would resemble the intrinsic awfulness of manhood or maledom or whatever you want to refer to it as.
Hating women for being Stacey's or whatever they refer them to.
Yeah.
But what's the political goal there? That's what always gets me off with this kind of thing.
Well, the fact that she's used joining up the dots is actually quite significant, as I will reveal later on. But if we scroll down a little bit, she says, speaking at an event about violence against women hosted by The Independent last Thursday, Dr. Proudman said a belief in incel culture was a critical factor in the massacre carried out by gunman Jake Davison in Plymouth in August. Davison, a self-proclaimed incel, shot dead 6 people in the port city on the south coast of Devon, with his mother and a 3-year-old girl among his victims, before aiming the gun at his own head. After the tragedy, it emerged Davison had previously uploaded videos referring to himself as an incel and lamenting the fact he had not lost his virginity as a teenager. Davison's murder spree was the deadliest mass shooting to take place in the UK in over a decade. Now, to state the obvious, incel terrorism has been a thing long before this has happened. And if we get the second clip up, of course, the first recognised case of incel terrorism was the case of Elliot Rodger in 2014. Rodger killed 6 people, injured 14, all around the University of California, where I believe he studied, before turning the gun on himself. His reasons for doing so, for going on this killing spree, were declared in his infamous Retribution video, which is quite, needless to say, creepy. But
I think it's still on YouTube, actually.
It is. And it's transcribed as well over here. The link will be attached. But in short, he had no luck with women whatsoever. His frustrations intensified when at university, when he was, as he saw it, reduced to watching others succeed in ways that he couldn't. He was particularly distressed by the fact that he was 22 and he was a virgin who'd never even kissed a girl. He didn't understand what was wrong with him. He referred to himself as the perfect guy and even the supreme gentleman, which he's now known as most commonly. Yeah, and a cult has almost been made out of him, or has been made out of him.
My understanding is it's like 99% irony, if not 100% though.
Yeah.
It's obviously not sincere.
No, it's not. I mean, most of it is ironic, and I think just kind of trolling the feminists a little bit. But he conducted the killings as an act of revenge against the society which, as he saw it, conducted or subjected him to the injustice. Hence why he targeted an area that had quite a famous sorority in it, even though the majority of the people he killed weren't even in that sorority. But I mean, he clearly had a narcissistic personality disorder, but it doesn't change how sad and shocking like the incident is. Not just for the people who died, but I mean, I'll be hated for saying this, but for him as well, given how awful he felt. I mean, that's not an excuse for what he did by any stretch of the imagination, but to be pushed to the point where you quite literally think that there is a structure that's almost opposed to your very kind of existence, which is that what has become the incel ideology, is pretty harrowing.
Do you think he was pushed there?
I believe there were forces pushing him, yes.
Right.
But I'll go on to explain that later on. Right. But there were other cases. I mean, there was if we move on to the next one, there's the Canadian incel killer, the case of Alec Manassian, who was convicted for 10 accounts of first-degree murder in Canada this year. Prosecutors argued that the crime was motivated, again, like Roger, by his hatred of women and that he was radicalised on online forums. Speaking with the police following his arrest in 2018, the accused told officers that he belonged to an online subculture of men who blame women for their sexual frustration and that he drew inspiration from others who used violence as a form of retribution for being unable to get laid. And interestingly, the judge actually disputed the notion that he was motivated by the incel culture to commit the crime, so I don't think anything came of that. But if we move on to the next one, which is the why I suppose Charlotte Proudman is doubling down on this. Jake Davison, that is. I mean, like Roger and Manassian, Davison's loneliness and inability to find love were common features of his frustrations, and he exhibited this on his YouTube channel. And these views that he espoused on his YouTube channel were believed to be motivations behind the killings. I mean, all of these incidents are honour killings, really. In virtue of insofar as they genuinely think that that society has done some harm to them and that there's got to be some kind of they almost want to put to bed in abstract terms the injustice that they have been subjected to.
I can see that you could see that in their motivations.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the thing I have with all of this is the terrorism aspect. So you could see that as murder, you can see that as mass murder, all the rest of it. And I'm vaguely familiar with the Portsmouth shooters incident. I watched his video he made beforehand, and I've seen Elliot Rodgers because it's just so famous, and his subsequent clips, which are all still on YouTube, which I find strange, but okay. And the thing is, there's no political goal. Like the terrorism aspect is for political violence. So an Islamist kills David Amos. Well, he does that because the West has waged war on the Muslim world. Therefore, they will, there's a role there. You will fear the Islamist world, and you will treat us more favorably than you will others, because otherwise we'll kill you.
Yeah,
there's a logical line of political thought.
I'm inclined to agree. I don't think that they've actually conspired via a political strategy to conduct
what's the political goal?
Well, exactly. I would argue that the political content of this comes from the fact that there are political forces presenting them in a certain way that has, I suppose, intensified their frustrations. And you could say that it's a response to that politicization, even though it's not conscious. And which again I'll explain in a minute. But I agree with you in principle that these are not political actors. I
mean, I don't know if you have it, but I remember the chap who's actually investigating that particular case of the. Was it Plymouth or Portsmouth? I always forget this.
It's Plymouth.
Plymouth, right. So in Plymouth, I remember the investigator who's in charge of terrorism just decided, no, we're not treating this as a terrorist incident because we can't find the evidence. As in, our definition of terrorism doesn't encompass this because it's not political.
Yeah, there's still pressure for it to be reclassified as a terrorist incident.
Yeah, I've read some of the internal documents in the Home Office. They have memes. They're sharing memes with each other in the Home Office. To be like, yeah, so these are the far-right memes of the incel movement. I'm like...
So there's this,
know what you're saying.
No, this conflation with the far right is extremely. I mean, just to say loose would be kind, really. But anyway, Charlotte Proudman, as a solution to, I suppose, the incel problem, is pushing for those merely participating in incel culture, such as participating in forums, to be classified as potential extremists and terrorists in virtue of their participation alone.
So whining about women,
whining about the fact that no one wants them, that they're basically being ostracized from the gene pool, and she basically sees these people as a potential threat to women.
What happens to all those forums?
Yeah, I mean, the incel could argue that that femcells can't exist given that they control access to sex, but.
Well, femcells that prove that wrong.
Yeah. I mean, there's merit to the femcell argument, but I mean, this is clearly a complete misreading of the incel community, isn't it? And I think it's more potentially counterproductive for what she wants to achieve as well. But so you're probably wondering who Charlotte Proudman is. Is this the first time that you've heard of her?
First, I recognise the name, yeah.
Yeah. So you recognise the name for a good reason. Here she is. She's the Me Too pioneer of the Me Too campaign. Or at least that's what she...
Wait, was she the lady who went on ITV?
She may have been. I didn't see
Good Morning Britain or something, and she was like, so they use these terms like cucked and simped, and the boomer hosts were like, yes, tell us more about the incel community that use cucked as a word.
That sounds very much like her, given the line she's now peddling. She's known by the BBC as the feminist barrister. She's a leading expert on gender-based violence, and she's a huge campaigner against FGM, which, don't get me wrong, this part of it's very good. I would campaign against FGM any day of the week, so power to her for that. But unfortunately, she's looking at the incel problem in a very narrow way. I don't think anyone would object to the idea of doing more to pick up on the warning signs of those with potentially murderous inclinations. I mean,
they literally released videos beforehand that you can check out.
Yeah, but does this apply to the majority of the incel community? That's the question. And I think the only way you can find out is if you actually have a look at the forums that I imagine she's targeting. So if we could get IncelNet up here, spot the misogyny.
Sorry, it's just so funny.
Spot the misogyny.
Right. So I mean, what we got here? We got some pin posts. Incel tears as fake news. Report feature. Female femcells. Generation Y.
I mean, are these misogynists, or are they just extremely unhappy, perhaps even depressed men who feel like they're being, well, at least from their perspective, denied a social good that everyone else has except for them because of
why
their
can't I
genes?
get laid?
Yeah.
Why don't girls like me?
Yeah.
That's it. I just see John typing there about MI5 smashing down the doors because we've been on incel.net.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it's an archive link, MI5.
Yeah. But for me, it's no wonder why forums like this exist, given how well, sex is constantly presented across popular culture as something that's infinitely available. This is a truth that only applies to a very, very small minority of men who are lucky enough to be that attractive, and all women, probably. But anyway, the natural response, I suppose, if you take that view, is to feel kind of, I suppose, slightly betrayed when you've been grown up with these expectations, looking at Hollywood movies that make it honestly look like that this is something that everyone could enjoy, and then you realise that actually the game works very differently.
Sorry, just in my head, I'm thinking back to like if you go onto an ISIS sympathizing board, what's going to be there? I mean, it's going to be videos of terrorism and be like, yeah, this is based, death to the kuffar, all the rest of it. Not, hey, women won't date me.
Yeah,
like that's not. No, these things are just two different things on different planets.
And what more than that? What do you think is going to is more likely to facilitate misogyny?
I'm sorry, but
get off Tinder for goodness sake.
Could you imagine jihadists talking like this? Well, I went on muslimsmeet.com and
like, why don't girls like me?
That's why I joined ISIS. I don't think it is.
But I think we can see from this that the overwhelming majority of people who use these forums use them more often than not as places to either make peace with their frustrations or perhaps just to be consoled by others or to console others to make, well, just because I suppose they have a moral conscience of how hard it is. They just see themselves to be naturally unlucky, having received a bad lot on the gene pool front, and just want to be, consoled.
Well, that's the weird thing. Elliot Rogers and the other chap, I feel like if they just did themselves up, they'd look a lot better than they do.
I mean, Elliot, I've seen enough forum posts of people who fancy Elliot Rogers to know that he's not. I mean, he's short, but below average in height, but his facial structure is fine.
Yeah.
But he's not ugly in the slightest. I mean, what was putting women off?
Was his personality.
Was his personality. When you're going to refer to yourself as the supreme gentleman constantly, they're probably going to think this guy's maybe
I've got the place to be.
Yeah. But anyway, if we look at the next one, which admittedly is very old, but this is one that is kind of more of a hotbed for catastrophizing. This is called "Women Can Only Love Chad."
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so Chad's the attractive guy.
Yeah, the clues in the name. Granted, it's pretty old, but the discussions, at least to me, don't seem to be all that misogynistic, as in there's no women hating involved. It's more just a hatred for the game, if anything. And I think, for a start, subreddits like this are not good in the slightest. But only because they're actually more harmful to men than they probably are to women. Well, because it's
I love the British response to that though is just ban it. There's there's a place where people are meeting and complaining at each other. Yeah, well that's not good, so ban it. Like, what? As if that solves anything.
Yeah, but I don't think that that going on places like this and seeing other people catastrophize about how awful everything is going to improve your chances of being happy or, shall we say, bleeding.
No, it's not going to make your personality any better.
No, it's not. So but in any case, it's quite a stretch to say that the people on these forums
look at these jihadists.
Yeah.
For the incel jihad. Yeah, I don't think that's what's happening. God.
Yeah.
I really wish we had the clip of her going on Good Morning Britain and being like, yes, they use cucked and simp and normie. I was like,
Did you actually happen to see the incel video that Vice put up featuring El Reeve?
No.
It's interesting because if you look at this video, well, she basically creates quite an extreme reaction just from her presence. As in, you actually have like one of the guys on the video actually starts saying that I'm going to like bomb a building or something like that, and she actually admitted like after in the interview that she believes these men to be saying these things because she is present. Then there's no actual genuine commitment to doing these things. It's more of it's a cry for help kind of thing towards women, or at least that's what she was alluding to. And
it's also not a great pickup line.
no, it isn't. I mean, it might.
I can't get laid, so I'm going to threaten this woman with a bombing unless she has sex with me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, exactly. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of this rhetoric. Whilst, I mean, don't get me wrong, for some people are going to be neurotic enough to actually like carry these things out, but you can't take an utterance like that and then think that these people immediately are capable of committing terrorism. Not least because the majority of people who say these things probably aren't going to do it, because if they were going to do it, they would conceal it to themselves, would they not? Isn't it more a cry for help rather than...
Most terrorists don't announce that, I'm going to do this terrorism tomorrow.
No, exactly.
So hijack these planes at this place at this time.
So to say, listen to these men and then assume that they're potential terrorists is a considerable overreach. Yeah. But anyway, diagnosing a belief in incel culture as extremism, I think, is what is in pretty bad faith. Not least because she completely ignores some of the other things on the internet that actually prey on men's frustrations and actually almost make a virtue out of doing it. Such as, I'm not sure if you've heard of this, the infamous female dating strategy site. If we could get this up now.
So these are the femcells?
These are not the femcells, no.
Who are they?
This is, I imagine, a feminist dating site based entirely on enabling women to take control. This is, I think, this is a direct quote, take control of their dating lives. In other words, it's a site that offers guidance for women who want to manipulate and frustrate men for sociopathic pleasure.
That sounds awful.
And it is. Isn't this quite literally the sort of thing that facilitates misogyny?
Yeah.
And on top of that, wouldn't that make misogyny actually seem like a natural reaction if women are conspiring to make your life worse?
I mean, if these guys are literally advocating for, we want women to be terrible to men, and then, the natural response would be men thinking that women are terrible.
Yeah. I mean, the way they want the rules to be is in plain sight, really. They want the ability to sexually frustrate men, in effect, for their own entertainment, whilst pointing the finger back at the male essence, really, when it all goes wrong. I mean, if Charlotte was actually genuinely committed to dealing with the problem of incel culture, surely she would trace it back to sites like this that are quite literally facilitating these resentful attitudes.
Well, she also wouldn't go on live TV and say "cucked" is an incel word.
Yeah, again,
she doesn't know anything.
I'm going to have to see that. But this, if anything, is, I mean, it's the opposite of toxic masculinity, isn't it? So it's toxic femininity. It's quite literally, well, the feminine being used as a mean of manipulating the masculine for the, very conscious of the fact that I'm probably sounding like a genderqueer theorist at the moment. I'll have to stop. But it's essentially making men feel. It's encouraging women to make men feel inferior on purpose so as to make them want more. That's pretty much the moral code of this site. That's how they think that the dating game should work for women. And it's, if I'm being perfectly honest, it's pretty sick, actually.
But also, if the incel forum is terrorism, then this would also reach that threshold of being a place of misogyny. Well, misandry. Yeah,
exactly. So if she's serious about curtailing potential incel terrorism, which has happened, it is something that, needless to say, is a terrible thing when it does. But she's got to start looking at some of the things at the ground level that are facilitating the resentment. She could start, for example, by investigating why some men are going to the extent of identifying with their involuntary celibacy, like a self-fulfilling prophecy that they objectively can never get laid. I've certainly would. My advice to incels would be to say stop identifying as an incel, and your lives would probably change considerably. But she could also look at why university campus culture in all of these cases has been cited in every has been cited by the perpetrator as a motivation for why they've conducted these killings. perhaps, there's something the universities are doing wrong here.
So I'm just reading some of this text as well, and it's just absurd. I mean, that one there, men always know, no matter what women struggle, childbirth, pregnancy, periods, child rearing, etc., we need to let go of the idea that men don't understand us. They do. No, we don't. No idea.
We will never understand you.
No.
Christ, I'm not going to be popular at the end of this.
That's fine.
By some, but no, she could also, and I think, and I think this doesn't really get a lot of attention from the feminist side, but she could actually at least acknowledge how appallingly dating applications encourage women to treat men.
Yeah, with this being an example.
Yeah, and needless to say, most obvious of all is the effect that was the institutional hatred of the male essence that we seem to have assumed is true, at least in humanities departments, has on the morale of men. I've got personal experience with this, which I won't declare here, but nonetheless, I do know that it isn't easy if you happen to be comprised of the unholy trinity, which I think the viewers know what that is, cis, het, and white. But yeah, but on a practical level, do you actually think something like this of course, I know what the answer is going to be. Do you think something like this could ever be effective? I mean, even
anti-incel.
Well, if you were quite literally to remove all of the little platoons on the internet where incels find solitude, you actually think this is going to make these terror attacks less frequent or more frequent?
You're also proposing something that can't be done, which is the stopping of people talking to each other.
Yeah.
Sorry, never going to happen.
Yeah, but if you're going to double down on quashing that, then I would speculate that it would actually get worse, given that the frustrations aren't going to be put out there. Like amongst these forums, I'm sure, there are probably some rational people who would say, look, calm down, do something different, perhaps get off this site.
Lift.
Yeah.
Or whatever else.
Yeah, if you move that away, you stop communicative, rational, moral discourse from happening. So it could lead to worsening of the situations. But yeah, another thing, it sounds like another potential waste of public money. If she actually wants to institutionalize this. So sorry, Charlotte, back to the drawing board.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full thing at 1 p.m. every weekday at lotuseaters.com, or you can sign up to get access to all the premium content we have on the site.
Yeah, we've got loads of really good stuff. Every week we have a Contemplations and Epochs episode that goes up, and in the Contemplations we talk about just interesting things, and the Epochs episodes are probably my favourite because I love talking about history. This latest one is we're doing a bit of a series on the 100 Years' War and why England kept winning. And we've not finished it yet, and you're going to really enjoy the end of that one. But we've also got other excellent episodes that we do, like the book club. The most recent one was Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell. This was about his time in Burma as a colonial officer, and when he was tasked with the shooting of a rampaging elephant. And it's really, really interesting what the circumstance of the thing was. But we also have lots of other content, such as premium articles, which have audio tracks on them for our silver and gold subscribers. And we do premium podcasts about things that we don't really feel that we can put on YouTube or have done a particularly large amount of research into. And so it's worth keeping them slightly more private. And we also do lots of very interesting interviews, such as this one with comedian Steve Hughes, which was really fascinating because I didn't expect him to be a philosopher. But anyway.
Yeah. Also, the last thing to mention is the live event content we have. So we occasionally, when we get around to it, doing our live events, and the videos from them are on the website as premium, of course, because people came to see and paid. So go and check that out. This is on the worst of critical race theory.
Yes.
And I do mean the worst.
It's unconscionable.
Yeah. So if you'd like access to all that premium content, go to lotuseaters.com and subscribe. Thank you and goodbye.